Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Millennium Pod, a Star Wars podcast by me, Ari, at ari.in.space on TikTok and at the Millennium Pod, all one word, on Instagram. This week, I'm super excited because I am joined by not one, but two of my internet friends. Why don't you guys go ahead, introduce yourselves, let us know where we can find you on social media, as well as, this is a Star Wars podcast, so I would love to hear we'll call it your relationship with Star Wars, why you like Star Wars, what Star Wars means to you.
Yeah. All right. I'll start.
Okay, great.
I'm Anna on on TikTok. I am at Missing Ben Solo, so it's very clear who my favorite character is. My relationship with Star Wars has definitely changed over the years. I grew up loving it. Like my family's a very nerdy family. We love all things Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, you name it, basically. And I used to just be like very into it, and like my family would get together and watch it, and like it was cool. And as I got older, I started to rewatch them myself, and I was like, oh, I really like these. Like, I don't just like watching them every now and then. And then I guess it was high school when the sequel trilogy came out. And that was the first time I was able to see Star Wars in theaters, and it just revolutionized it from there. I was like, this is game over. Like, I'm obsessed with this. I love this so much. And I would definitely also say that quarantine, like, kind of brought the hyperfixation back because I kind of sidelined it at school and everything because like have so much other stuff going on. But recently it's just really become a passion again. And it's a very love relationship with Star Wars. It's a love-hate relationship with the fandom, but that's a whole other thing.
So, hello, I'm Kev, or Kevin. It's my actual name. I go by Kev. You can find me on TikTok at Kev28 underscore, excuse me. And I have a very interesting relationship with Star Wars, I guess. Star Wars has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. One of my earliest memories, like ever, is me sitting on my living room floor watching A New Hope on VHS. I don't remember anything except for the purple smoke coming around the door on the Tantive 4, and then all the stormtroopers busting out. So I don't know what life is like without Star Wars, really. But then I was probably around 10 years old, and as I was moving into the middle school, I kind of disassociated myself with Star Wars because you're going into this new school with when all the elementary schools combine into one. And at the time, Disney hadn't bought Lucasfilm yet. So Star Wars back then was like a nerdy thing. Like if you liked Star Wars or you expressed any interest or passion for Star Wars, you were going to get labeled as a nerd. And me being a 10-year-old kid going into this new school with all these new people, I didn't want to be seen that way. I didn't want to put that target on my head almost. So I literally gave up on Star Wars. I disassociated with everything Star Wars, didn't care about it, didn't talk about it, didn't think about it. And it wasn't until The Force Awakens that brought me back. And that's like you guys know, and for those that don't, the sequels are my favorite. I love the sequels.
Yep.
And that's the big reason why. It's because that's what brought me back into Star Wars, and that's what re-sparked and reignited my love and passion for Star Wars. And then, a couple years later, I'm obsessed with Star Wars, and it's literally the only thing I think about. And it's probably a problem, and it's probably an issue. But you know what? It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like all of us on TikTok, we have that issue of the Star Wars hyperfixation, but I feel like it's kind of a trend with a lot of the Star Wars TikTok creators where we all kind of didn't care about it for a while, and then it was like reborn, especially with the sequel trilogy. So that's really great. Before I forget, Kev also has a podcast, so y'all should check it out. It's
I
called Back to
do.
Jakku,
Yes,
correct?
I just launched the first episode on May the 4th. I
Excellent.
figured it would be a great way to celebrate Star Wars Day. So yes, back to Jakku.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So yeah, y'all check that out too. So Anna sort of alluded to this in a way, but today's episode is going to be about Kylo Ren slash Ben Solo, and I personally think that these two are like the ultimate Kylo Ren Ben Solo experts. I have not seen somebody like anybody with more of a wealth of knowledge, so I'm really excited because for me, I don't want to say I never like cared about the character, but like that is the truth, I was like, oh, he's like the villain guy, whatever. Oh, he got redeemed. Okay, cool. But it wasn't until, being on TikTok and seeing creators like you guys, really digging into the character and explaining like why he's actually really really neat and like super like such a rich character really, that I started to like think about it and then start to observe these things more in the film. So I'm super excited to get into it, because I do feel like he could be an often overlooked character, because I know for myself that is something that I experienced. But I would like to hear, briefly how you guys feel about him in general, and why he's your favorite. I'm pretty sure he's both of your favorites.
Yes, that is
Yes,
correct.
definitely.
Kylo Ren is one of the most complex characters in all of Star Wars. And if you just watch the movies on a surface level, or you just look at his character on a surface level, you might not understand that. Because Force Awakens, we introduced him very early in the movie, and you see him, and he's presenting himself like he's going to be the big bad villain. He kills Laura Santeca. He stops Poe's blaster bolt midair with the Force. It's like, whoa, he can do that thing. He's dressed in all black. He's menacing. He's ruthless. He's going to be the next Darth Vader. And obviously that's what he wants to be. But then he throws his first temper tantrum pretty early on in the movie. And you're like, Darth Vader wouldn't do that. Like that's not something Darth Vader would do. So on the surface level, he's like, you're almost stereotypical, like big bad, like he's going to be the villain. But then he starts to show his cracks, and he starts to show that he's flawed. And yes, he's trying to become the next Darth Vader, but the entire point of his character is that he's not the next Vader. No matter what he does, he will never be the next Vader. And there's just so much depth and stuff to his character that if you're just not looking for it or not critically thinking about it, I don't think you're going to pick up on. And Kylo Ren is by far the character I've thought the most about in Star Wars. And I literally, I keep finding new things, even up to this day, that about his character that I never realized before. And he's such a good character.
Yes, I totally wholeheartedly back everything that you said. I think that he is one of the most complex characters that we're presented with, because you really don't get a sense until that temper tantrum. And when those cracks start to form, you're like, oh, there's like a little bit more under there. And I think The Last Jedi did a really, really good job of like playing up that like conflict within him. Because if you went from seeing him in the beginning of The Force Awakens to then fast forward to the hut scene when he's like about to touch hands with Rey, that is not the same person even. Like it doesn't even look remotely the same. And I think an issue that people have is that there's this obvious stigma against the sequel trilogy. So even when there's a character like that in it, they don't really want to put themselves out there to go deeper and like do more research about it, because it's attached to something that they aren't necessarily the biggest fan of. And I think that's understandable. Like, why would you subject yourself to something that you don't necessarily enjoy? But I do think that also with like the very minimal amount of actual canon Kylo material, it's very easy to know everything about the character. Like there isn't really this excuse anymore of like, I'll say something in a video and they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, like you should check out the comics. Like literally the only things about him out there are the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, and occasionally like the excerpts in the novelizations, and recently the Skywalker Family at War book. There's like that little excerpt about Ben Solo and like the Heir to Darkness in the back. But I definitely was more attached to him in The Last Jedi, and definitely when he was redeemed in The Rise of Skywalker, because Ben Solo, just as a person, I've clung on to ridiculously. And I'm always a fan of redemption arcs in stories. So as soon as he had a redemption arc, I was like, that's the one. That's the one that I care about the most, because then you get to see that background and it's just so tragic and complex. And I wish we could have seen more of that on the screen. Here's to hoping we still do eventually. But yeah, he's definitely just one of the most deep and complex characters out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting how much of a deep and complex character he is with, like you say, like the limited amount of content we actually have for him. Because I would argue that he's just as complex as someone like Anakin, and we have a million things about Anakin, right? But really, like you said, like for Kylo, all we have is basically the movies and the comic, which I read like literally yesterday based on your recommendation. And already, like the comic, I don't know, probably took me like 40 minutes to read. I'm a pretty slow reader, but even that like small amount of content already added so much depth. So I'm like excited to bring that up later. But yeah, I hope to, maybe in the form of comics or potentially like an actual novel. That would be fantastic. I've recently got into the Star Wars novels, so I'm like, give me a novel about everything. I want to read it all. But yeah, it is interesting. And I do think, like you said, it's sad that a lot of people will write him off just because they don't like the sequels. But yeah, I did want to kind of talk about, and you guys sort of both already started to mention this, so that I can just tell this is going to be great. But I did want to talk about something that makes him really complex is that pressure to live up to his family name. And it's not just like in the comic, he mentions like it's not just the light side like with his parents, but it's also like the dark side wants him to live up to Vader. And I can't imagine that pressure to like live up to that. And reading that for me made me realize again, you know, why he's so, I'm gonna say, unstable throughout the movies, right? Because he has this immense amount of pressure, and to live up to like just Leia and Han would be one thing, right? But he also wants to be living up to Vader. And so yeah, I would love to hear your guys' more eloquent take on that, because that's just something that's really new that I realized. But yeah.
Yeah, he gets this legacy thrown upon him. Obviously being the son of Leia Organa and Han Solo, you know, heroes of the rebellion. But he didn't ask for any of this. He's just a kid who didn't want a legacy thrown on him, and these expectations he's expected to rise up to and to meet. Even his name, he doesn't like his name Ben because he's named after Ben Kenobi, and he's like, there's a part in the comic about it. It's like, oh, I didn't even know him, or something like that, and you know, he's expected to meet all these expectations just because he's a Skywalker. But he doesn't want it, you know, and kind of every decision he makes really isn't his own. We see that with Snoke, and kind of how Snoke is in his head and everything. And it's not until the Rise of Skywalker where he's finally free. He can finally think for himself. He can clearly focus. And so you almost feel bad for him in a way that he's kind of been set on this path that he really had no control over or no choice over.
Absolutely. And again, with like the whole childhood aspect of it, he born to resistance heroes. He's a child of war. Like he's born right after the war ends, basically. And he's thrust into this world that is rebuilding. And his parents are tasked, well, Leia is tasked with basically helping that rebuild. And he's like, okay, so here I am. And now I'm going off with my uncle to be a Jedi. He didn't even really necessarily want to do that in the first place. And he's like, all right, let's go. He then puts all this pressure on himself that he's like, I don't care about the other students at this academy, basically, because I know that I'm a Skywalker and I need to be the best. He puts his own pressure on himself, absolutely like added on to the family pressure of needing to live up to that and saying, like, well, because I have this blood, because I'm related to these people, I'm named after Obi-Wan, I need to be the best that I can be. And he bottles all that up inside. And I really think that like something they could have, if someone just talked to him and said, like, you are enough, like, you're fine, you don't have to keep doing this, a lot would have been different. And the only example we really get of that is Ty, I think, talking to him, like, you have this little box inside, like, you can be who you want to be. He keeps telling him, like, be yourself, be you. And he's like, I don't know basically who I am. And he has no idea of like his own self-identity because he's marking himself with only these names and saying, well, I have to do this because I'm this. And he doesn't give himself his own sense of agency in anything that he does. And I think that that's like one of the saddest parts about it is he's constantly just trying to live up to things. And then even when he initially falls, he's not immediately dark. He like when he goes with Ren and the Knights and they're interrogating that guy, he's like, oh no, like we don't have to kill him. Like I can just read his mind. And Ren is like, okay, but then kills him right after anyway. And then he's like, okay, so I'm not good enough for this either. And he just keeps thinking that he's not good enough. And obviously Snoke's manipulation from the time he was a child just keeps reinforcing that. He was telling him he wasn't a good enough Jedi. Now he's not a good enough, not Sith, but he's not a good enough dark side user. He's not going to be Vader. And it's just a rough cycle of non-acceptance for him.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting parallel between like the Anakin Palpatine and the Ben Snoke, in that both Anakin and Ben were searching for somebody basically to help them. And it was, they both had two different problems, but in general, they were searching for someone to help them. And the only person who was there and willing to do that was the creepy old man. And so it's just like, I mean, I love that about Star Wars, that, you know, we constantly see like, hello, if we would just help, you know, the young people in their trauma, we would be a lot better off. But I did want to talk about, I think, I know a lot of people think this and I tend to agree and it pains me, but that Leia and Han are largely responsible. And I didn't think this at first because I would hear people say this. I'd be like, how dare you say something like that, right? But then I read Bloodline by Claudia Gray, which is excellent. And it's just really like Leia's in her head the whole time being like, I'm a terrible mom, but Ben's been sent away. Now he's going to find out, that Vader is his grandfather from not me. And it's just like, that really made me realize, I was like, man, they were just really not good parents. And like, I don't really think they had a good relationship. That's a whole other thing. Han and Leia's relationship is a whole other topic of conversation for me. But in general, I think having that unstable relationship between them and then them sending him off, and, Leia was busy, as you said, basically doing everything, and Han was off racing and stuff. And so not being there for him, I think definitely contributed largely. Like, he had parents, unlike Anakin when he fell, but he didn't really have parents at the same time. So I don't know, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that once again, because they're probably more developed.
Oh, no, it definitely stemmed from the same thing. I was very reluctant to accept that Leia and Han were bad parents because, they were the original couple. They were the original Star Wars couple. And it's like, oh, you want them to work so badly. But then reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they made mistake after mistake. In the Family at War book, they give him a nanny droid at the age of 2. Ben is literally 2 years old, and the droid almost kills him in his sleep. What? How do you not see the problem with that already? And then continues to basically only have a relationship with this droid because Leia is off doing work, and Han basically goes, I don't know how to be a good dad, and is like, I'm just going to go do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I think their relationship is a whole other monster to tackle between Han and Leia, but he has all these people in his life, and they mention how Chewbacca and Lando would come look after him, and he had all these cute affectionate nicknames for them, but in reality he was basically just relegated to having a nanny droid. Mm-hmm. And there's a line that really stuck with me. It's that when you're a child and you don't really understand why your parents aren't there. Your parents are justifying it to themselves. Leia's like, well, I'm doing all of this for the good of the galaxy. But little Ben doesn't know that. He's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why are they not spending time with me? Why are they not raising me kind of situation? And you can't really expect a child to get that. That's not his fault for not understanding that. I also think the whole not telling him about Vader, a huge mistake, finds out through the HoloNet years later, and he's like, you've been keeping this from me this whole time. So yeah, their parental style was definitely has a lot of blame on it.
I think Ben Solo just needed a hug.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think everything could have worked out better if he just got a hug. I think Ari, I think you said unstable. That's the one word you could use to describe Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. Literally every aspect of his life is unstable, unbalanced. Leia and Han obviously not being the best parents, and that obviously I think is the root of his downfall almost. But he always did have the dark side in him. I think it was either an Aftermath, the second Aftermath book, or the third one where he was still in Leia's womb, and Leia could sense something was up, something wasn't right. And when I was reading that, I'm like, that is so cool that he's always had the dark side in him. And he's the opposite of Anakin almost, because Anakin goes, he's the chosen one. He gets found at 9 years old, and he's the chosen one, and obviously he goes down the dark path. Ben Solo started off on the dark path with that dark side in him, and then eventually worked his way up and redeemed himself. And the parallels between Anakin and Kylo are just fantastic. But yeah, he just his family support system wasn't there, and obviously that's a real issue. If you don't have a supportive family in your formative years, that's going to cause problems later on in life. And in the case of Ben Solo, it was galaxy wide problems.
Yep. Yeah, no, I definitely, like I said, it pains me, I love Leia. I have mixed reviews about Han, but I love Leia, and I don't want to say she's a bad mom, but I mean, the evidence kind of points towards that. Yeah, she sent Ben off to be with Luke, and I mean, I love Luke, one of my favorite characters, but I mean, was that really the best plan? Probably not. I mean, yeah. Luke is, love the guy, but he's got some things going on too. So I'm wondering, with what you're saying, with how, he had the darkness in him always, do you think that he always would have struggled in some capacity with the dark side, been tempted, maybe slightly fallen in some way, even if he had had, loving parents, not droids taking care of him? Like, do you think that he would have struggled in some way, like he was destined, I guess we'll say? Or do you think that really all his problems could have been solved had he had, the support systems, and wasn't looking at, Snoke as like almost a father figure because his was absent?
Mm-hmm. That's a big nature versus nurture question. And I think in the case of Ben Solo, he would have ended up to some capacity kind of towards the dark side, just because it's instinctive for him, it's natural for him. It would have been interesting to see though how he would have turned out if Han and Leia were better parents. Would it have been as consequential, or what, compared to what we see with the sequel trilogy? I don't know. Probably would have been a little bit better, but you almost wonder if Snoke would have still been able to find a way to get in his head and manipulate him. But yeah, so I do think it would have changed things a little bit, but I do think he still would have ended up on the dark side.
Yeah, I definitely think he would lean towards it. I have no way of telling like how far into it he would have gone. I think another player that would have been big in it is Luke. I think if Luke had done like a better job, like instead of the instinct to, squash the bad feeling where it goes, he like realized after he did it, obviously in that like moment, he's like, no, well, everyone lives with this balance of darkness and light. No one is 100% light, 100% dark, except maybe like Palpatine and Snoke, but that's they're the bad guys. That's the purpose. Everyone has this kind of balance, and like we've already said many times, Kylo was very unbalanced. And I feel like if Luke had done more of a job like explaining that to him and like exploring that side of it and being like, listen, you don't have to be scared that you feel these like the inclination towards the dark. Like, I can help you. I feel like if he had just kind of given that helping hand, that would have made it a little bit better. Again, who's to say he still wouldn't have fallen because of Snoke's manipulation constantly in his head. But yeah, the fact that another student was able to tell that Ben was hiding stuff and like Luke didn't have the brain power to just go talk to him about it. Like Ty literally just sits there and he's like, yeah, just tell me about your problems. And he's like, no, but like your uncle probably could have talked to you and like gotten something out of you. But I agree that he definitely has an inclination towards the dark side. And there might have been like ebbs and flows of like he dips into it, but then he's like, oh no. And like maybe comes about realizing that he should be with the light sooner or something along those lines.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of like, that's the vibe I get as well from him, and like my limited thoughts on him. But I do think I like what you point out about how Ty literally was like, yeah, like, buddy, like, what's up? Meanwhile, Luke was like, oh, I sent something bad. Let me pull my lightsaber out. Like, it just seems like there was a lot of things that could have been, like if I don't know how old Ty was, like I'm assuming teenage-ish. If a teenager can figure out that this other teenager essentially is struggling with something, why can't the adults? Like, I mean, this is just a classic case of the adults don't know what's going on.
That almost makes me think, what if Luke did know or that something was up, but he was scared to like pursue that or to like talk to Ben about that? I think that's an interesting thought too, because when we're talking about this, that a teenager could figure out that something was wrong with Ben, but not his uncle, not Luke Skywalker. It almost seems silly that he wouldn't be able to. So I'm almost wondering if maybe he did know, but for whatever reason didn't decide to do anything about it.
Yeah. I feel like he had to have had some sort of like sense of what was going on, but maybe he just like didn't know how to deal with it, and he was afraid if he brought it up, then it would like do something wrong. But also then it's like a big part of it goes back to the pressure. Like he started taking Ben on all of these missions, but not letting him do anything. He had to have some sort of idea like, oh, this is kind of pissing Ben off. Like Ben wants to be able to do stuff. Like maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. I do think he had to have some sort of like notion, but also they do mention how Ben is like incredibly gifted at boxing himself out and like not letting people in. However, it is Luke Skywalker. You can't tell me that he is able to be beaten by like 20-year-old Kylo in terms of the Force. So yeah, that's Luke's non-action is definitely suspect.
I definitely think like Luke I think he had to, like you're saying, like he had to have known, but it's almost like he just didn't care enough to actually deal with it. Like it's almost like he kind of chalked Ben up to just teenage angst. And that's what I would assume with Luke, especially when we see in like The Last Jedi, like his regret and his crankiness. And I think that really comes, like, first of all, I loved Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi, but I think that comes from, realizing, shoot, I could have done something when and I had the chance, but I didn't because for whatever reason. So yeah, I think it's sad, I get why, people were unhappy with Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi, but I mean, I loved it without going into it, obviously, because that's not what this is about, but I thought it was great. So I guess we pretty much, I don't know if you guys have final thoughts on like his fall. That's like the first part of what I wanted to talk about. I'll let you wrap that up, but I don't have anything more to say about his fall, but I'm sure you guys do. So, tell me some more about his fall and the tragedy before we go into, the redemption side of it.
I'm looking at my notes and seeing if I have anything.
I have a good quote. I don't know if it's much of a thought, but I did write down a quote.
Love it.
I think it's from the comics, because he says it to, I think he says it to Ty. I might be wrong. I might be misremembering, but he says neither one, or it might be Snoke. Regardless, Ben says this.
Yeah.
Neither one sees me as a person. I'm just a legacy, a set of expectations. And that just kind of like sums him up for me. Mm-hmm. In that kind of sense, like he knows that he's just that and he'll never live up to it.
Yeah, I remember reading that quote and I was like, oh, my heart, I'm starting to feel for this man, like, poor guy. Yeah, no, that's an excellent quote. And it's so true. Like, he's kind of just a man who's trapped and doesn't really know a way out and no one's helping him. Okay. Well, Rey is very important to this story. I really liked in the comic, was not expecting, when as he's like fully turning into Kylo Ren, whatever, there's a like slight I don't know if it's like actually a panel, but whatever, of Rey. And she's like, do you feel that? It feels cold I think she's talking to Unkar Plutt. And I was just like, oh my goodness.
I
like,
loved that so much.
It just adds so much richness to the dyad, because I've had some issues, grappling with the dyad, because, it's on a surface level, not really explained as well as it could be. And so I loved that. Everybody needs to see it, because it shows that it's not just like, because for the longest time, I will be honest, I thought it just happened when they like looked inside each other's minds and then they got connected like that. I didn't realize it was like a long time coming thing. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but whatever. And so I just loved seeing that, it's been so long, like their whole lives, I'm assuming, like from the beginning, right? They were connected through the Force from the beginning. So yeah, let's talk about Rey and her relationship and to Ben, and the importance of her to helping him essentially when no one else would.
Mm-hmm. Redeemed Ben Solo wouldn't have happened without Rey. Mm-hmm. She was really the one that opened his eyes and got him thinking about, I can change. I don't have to be under Snoke's control anymore. I can kind of set myself on this my own path. And Rey was the one that showed him that. And that throne room scene from The Last Jedi. Oh my goodness. One of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars.
So good.
It was so good when he slashes that lightsaber through Snoke, and that's just like, yes, he finally, stuck it up to his abuser and he set himself free. And it's just, Rey is arguably the most important person to him, because without her, he wouldn't have turned back to the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's never really had someone fight for him. So just like, even seeing the littlest bit of her like fight for him, he was like, oh, like someone actually cares about me. Like someone cares enough to try to keep bringing me back. Like he definitely admired her relentless persistence.
Yeah.
Every time she saw him, she's like, Ben's still in there. I know you're not just this bad guy. And she's like, I can see it. I can help you. And I love the throne room scene with my whole being. And that was one of the reasons I also didn't really get on board with people wanting Rey to turn dark, because she was so important to me, to representing the light side and like embodying this second chance for other people. And also it was kind of, although she does become a Palpatine, at first he's like, she's a nobody. She's a nobody and she's trying to save me. Like, clearly name doesn't mean everything. Then he finds out she's a Palpatine and he's like, she's good? Like, how is she good if she has this name? And I think that kind of sets in motion a little bit of the like, oh, I don't necessarily have to be like defined by these labels necessarily anymore. Because he's like, here's this nobody who's now a Palpatine who's really good, and she's trying to help me, and I'm bad. And like, I just think that her and Kylo's just whole dynamic is one of my favorite things about the sequels, 100%.
It's really good. I really like what you just said about, like that name doesn't mean anything. I hadn't even thought of that. So this is why this is great. But it's so true, actually. And it's so interesting for someone who, as we said previously, all his life has been trying to live up to either any of the names that are associated with him, to realize that, you can be saved by a nobody, being a nobody. You can do things like, you don't have, like, names are irrelevant, really, like, but something I also love about the sequels and their dynamic is like the lightsaber fights that come out of it. Like, every single one of them, all of them are not just like just a lightsaber battle. And that's what I love about the sequels. Like, people are so quick to be like, they're so lame. I can't handle it, because first of all, they are not lame. They are so good. And they serve as such a great plot telling or storytelling device. I mean, in every single one of them, we see conflict in both Rey and Kylo, like more so in Kylo. But it's just, they're so good. I mean, right from the beginning, in the very first one in The Force Awakens, at the end, when they're fighting, and Kylo, you can tell his conflict, and it's so frustrating to me that people will disregard how epic that fight is, because there's no twirls and flips. I mean, like, the conflict in them is incredible, because first of all, I mean, Kylo's just killed his dad, right? And then he's trying to get Rey to join him, but he's also like trying to not let her get away, and it's just like,
I cannot believe how many people still argue like, oh, Kylo Ren, he was trained by Luke Skywalker. He should be able to easily take out Rey. And it's like, that's not what he's trying to do. And
yeah.
it's like, well, plus he was injured. He got shot with Chewie's bowcaster, and the entire movie up until this point has been proving the point how powerful Chewie's bowcaster is. So the fact that he can, let alone walk, well, talking's hard sometimes. The fact that he can duel, let alone walk, is impressive after taking a hit from that. And obviously, like you said, he killed his dad. He's not, mentally in the right place at that moment. And like he says, he's trying to get Rey to join him. He's not trying to kill her. He's not trying to kill her at all during any of the fights. The only thing he wants to do with Rey when he's fighting her is just talk. Like, he just wants to have a conversation and talk. He is never the first one to draw the blade or to take the first strike. It is always Rey. Even in The Last Jedi, during the first Force connection, he's super like calm about it. He's like, who's connecting us, or I can't see your surroundings. And then Rey just murders Snake out of nowhere, like super aggressive, super mean. And she's always the one to kind of strike first at Kylo. But Kylo is so in awe of her, I guess, or so curious about her, maybe in love with her. But and he's always just he wants to understand, whereas Rey is showing, like, I used to call it the dark side tendencies, because there are many instances where Rey kind of shows a little bit of the dark side kind of coming out of her. But Kylo is always just super calm with her, super, I'm sure he wants to be understanding and everything. And yeah, Rey and Kylo's relationship and connection is arguably my favorite part of all of Star Wars. I love it so much.
Agreed, absolutely. And I definitely, part of me, I am a big Reylo fan, so of course that's natural that I'm like, I love the connection and the whole just evolution of the two of them. Also, another point I wanted to make about the lightsaber battle in The Force Awakens, with like kind of going back to Kylo's like inability to accept even fully the dark side. Someone pointed out once, like in right before when he's standing on the bridge with Han, the way the film shows like the blue and the red on his face when he goes from like he's half and half and he's contemplating, and then he does it and it's red. And I was like, I was so obsessed with that scene when I found that out.
I made a TikTok about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was you.
Yeah, the symbolism in the lighting in that shot is fantastic. It's
there you go. I didn't even remember it was you, but it was you. And I ever since then I think about that every time I watch it. And then when he goes outside and he's punching the wound, just trying to channel that pain and like not even anger, because I think that that's a big difference between him and Anakin, as many parallels as there definitely are. I think a lot of Anakin's comes from that pain and like loss, whereas Kylo's, he's trying to force himself to feel that, and his is just like anger and like almost self-defense in a way of like, I need to do this to survive, and just, oh my gosh, yeah. The Force Awakens, that whole fight is so
good,
criminally
it's
like,
underrated,
analyzed in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Plus,
it just go ahead.
The cinematography in that fight with the blue and red lightsabers in the dark forest, it looks so good.
It does.
It looks so good.
It looks so good. I saw someone make a point on TikTok. It might have been one of you guys. I don't know. But with Ben hitting his wound, it was so that he would feel the physical pain, so he wouldn't be overwhelmed by the pain of having just killed Han, which is just like, again, the way they are showing his conflict throughout the sequel trilogy. Like, say what you want about the sequel trilogy, but they show Ben Solo / Kylo Ren's conflict so incredibly well, and I think that's especially shown through like the various battles. I mean, we even see like in on Crate in The Last Jedi, when Rey isn't there, and I mean, you can argue whether or not it's a real lightsaber battle because Luke's just force projecting, but like, I think it is. And it's interesting because in every other battle in the lightsaber battle in the sequels, it's him against Rey. And there is that, that bargaining, that reasoning, that trying to, figure stuff out. But when he's fighting against Luke, it's just complete unhinged anger. And I think that just shows again, like how important Rey is to him, and in keeping him in balance and keeping him from falling further, because then he sees, Luke, who has betrayed him. And I mean, I think he did 100%, and he just can't see any reason anymore. And it's all just so good.
I love about that fight too, is how Luke force projects himself with the blue lightsaber, with the Skywalker saber. Because that shows, because Kylo, he just destroyed that thing. He should know that he just destroyed that thing, and that something is up if Luke is holding that saber. But he's so conflicted, and his mind is not in the right place. He can't focus, and he doesn't see that Luke is holding the saber that he just destroyed. I love that so much. Plus the footprints too. Luke's not leaving any footprints in the salt, and it's just so good.
Even visually stunning. Yeah. And like the sequels in general just do such a good job of show don't tell. And that's what people struggle with, I think. But oh my God, it's just so good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the first to admit I too struggled with that. Like, I was not a Last Jedi fan when it first came out. I listened to the internet. Whatever.
Same.
Everyone needs a good redemption arc.
Everyone did, honestly, at one point, yeah.
But it's so good. And the other thing too, because one time I was wondering why Luke force projected with the blue saber and not the green saber. So I looked it up, and apparently Rian Johnson said in an interview that in Luke's mind, in that moment when he was force projecting, he knew that the blue saber would make Kylo seem more unhinged, because that was Vader's, Anakin's saber, and the green saber, Luke's green saber, means nothing to him. But seeing Luke, the guy he hated, holding his grandfather's saber would unhinge him even more, which is just like the amount of like Rian Johnson is criminally underrated for the amount of thought he put into that.
Plus Luke projected himself physically as the last time he saw Ben, which goes to reinforce that notion of he wants to get Ben as angry as he can in that moment. And it was so good.
And it worked. It worked
so well. While we're on the topic of lightsabers and lightsaber fights, first of all, I love the origin story of Kylo's red saber, how he built it from his Jedi saber.
Yes.
And while he was trying to bleed his crystal, he was just filled with this rage and these memories that almost are haunting him, and he cracks his crystal. So he puts it in his saber. He tries to ignite it, but it basically explodes on him. So that's why he has the cross guard, because those are the exhaust vents for that extra power caused by that cracked crystal. And if that cracked blade is not a perfect symbol of Kylo Ren, I don't know what is. He is unbalanced, unstable, could explode at any minute. And it's just so good. And then his lightsaber fighting style. I just recently made a TikTok about this. When he's Kylo Ren, he fights clunky. He fights aggressive. His strikes are hard, and he relies on overpowering his opponents using brute force. He's not smooth with his fighting style. He's clunky with it. He's choppy with it. When he's Kylo Ren, and when he has that cracked kyber crystal in his blade. In Rise of Skywalker, the second he gets his hands on that saber with that intact kyber crystal, his fighting style instantly changes from clunky and aggressive to fluid and elegant. When he's going up against the Knights of Ren, his swings are smooth. He's got like a rhythm, like a motion with it. It's just it's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
So good.
I am obsessed with the Bendemption scene. I've watched that scene just by itself on random days because I'm like, it is just so good.
It's so good, especially that whoever made that like edit with what's it called? I Need a Hero. Oh, have you guys seen
Looking
that?
out for a hero? Oh my gosh, yes.
That is Ben Solo's song.
That's so good. Every time I hear that song.
People have used that song with other Star Wars characters, and I'm like, you can't outdo the doer. This is Ben's song.
Yeah, there was somebody who put that song over Luke's scene from Mandalorian season 2, and I commented, I'm like, this is cool, but this will always be Ben Solo's song.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely Ben Solo's song, and it fits perfectly. Like, I don't know. The universe was aligned
every time I
for
hear
that
the song, I just play that scene in my head, and it's the best thing in the world.
Me too. It usually comes on my running playlist. I'll be like out running, and then I'm like, yes, I'm Ben Solo redeemed, right along. No, but actually, on the topic of his lightsaber, the one thing I love is in The Rise of Skywalker when they're fighting on like the abandoned Death Star, and Rey ends up like killing him before she heals him with his red saber, and like the symbolism for that, like killing Kylo Ren with Kylo Ren basically is just I can't. It's just I noticed that a couple times ago when I rewatched it, because say what you want about Rise of Skywalker, I think it's a really fun movie. Is it bad? Yeah, but is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. So I rewatched that probably the most, even though it's not even my favorite. But anyway, I noticed that, and I was just like, how have I not noticed this before? This is incredible. Like you guys said, like sequels are very much show, not tell. And they put so much thought and so much like effort and symbolism. And if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. It's so sad that people are going to overlook how much richness there is just because they want to hate.
No, literally. And that whole sequence, just like from that moment when she stabs him, Kylo Ren is dead. And I think that from there, they play up on that, because then she's like, I wanted to take your hand. Ben's hand, because now he's Ben again, and then he talks to Han, and Han's like, Kylo's dead, and I'm like, oh yes, like they're continuing that thought, and it's just, oh my god, it's so good. I also love like the concept of like it's still his Ben Solo lightsaber, but it's corrupted, like as opposed to just, okay, he'll make a new lightsaber when he goes to the dark side. I love that it's just his old saber that is now falling apart. Like I love the exposed wire too. Like it's very like minimal detail, but for some reason I love it. Yes. Oh my god,
so good.
Like exposed wire, it's beautiful. Because I have the Ben Solo one, and I love just they're next to each other, and I'm like, it's beautiful.
I need to get one. I need to get my hands on one. The other thing I love too is when he's talking to Han for the second time in sequels, and he says like that iconic line, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Every time I'm just like tears. Wow, this is incredible. Like, and they say the sequels weren't planned out well. Like, come on. That's one thing that they did do well. Like,
yeah, exactly. I have many issues with The Rise of Skywalker, but damn if it isn't like such a fun and exciting movie to watch. It's still a great ending to an amazing saga. Like, yeah, there's little nitpicky things, but I have my own rewrite in my head, but I can still enjoy it when I watch
it was very much for the fans. It kind of felt like fanfic, but I still loved it.
Yes, it did.
That scene with Han and Ben was one of the most powerful scenes in that movie. And a lot of people say that, oh, it should have been Anakin that talked to him in that moment.
That
but
makes no sense.
It would have made no sense. Han Solo was the person he needed to talk to in order to turn back to Ben Solo, because he's been living with that guilt and that regret ever since he did it. And the only way he would become Ben Solo again was if he made peace with himself, and having Han come back as a memory, basically saying like, it's okay, I forgive you, I still love you. Like that scene was perfect. How do you guys feel about him throwing his lightsaber? Because in one way, like, it's very symbolic. It's basically him getting rid of Kylo Ren forever. But at the same time, like, it probably would have come in handy when he needed to go.
That is valid. It probably would have, although I love the symbolism so much.
Yeah.
Like, just that's so powerful. Like that shot of just him, like, just watching it sail off in the distance. And I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful. And that scene just between the two of them, my favorite might be him when he's like sputtering and he's just like, Dad. And he's like, I know. I'm like, oh my God, the callback is so good.
Yeah.
So good. And I think the only place, like, I agree, I don't think it should have been Anakin. Talk about like him not actually knowing the person, like him with Obi-Wan, like, I'm named after this guy. He doesn't know who Anakin is. The only place I think Anakin would have fit into it is when he force heals Rey. I wouldn't have been totally against it if he had shown up and been like finish what I started, because that's actually what he started. But at the same time, I kind of like it being Ben and Rey's moment. I could go either way on that, but yeah.
You know, I think I like the launching the saber, mainly because I feel like it was just important for Ben to have like every aspect of Kylo just like out of reach, gone. Not that I think had he used the saber again, anything, like, I think he was fully back to the light, but I think for him it was important to just like, I need to get rid of this forever. But I mean, would have been a cool toy to have around.
Probably
it's a very cool saber. I did like that we finally got to see, I think it's the first time in Rise of Skywalker we actually see him like stab someone with like the crossguard part. I don't know if I can't think of a scene before Rise of Skywalker where we saw that, because for a long time I was like,
he does use the crossguard. Well, sorry, your video cut out, so I thought you were done talking. But he does use the crossguard to or am I quiet again?
No, you're fine.
You're good.
Okay. He does use the crossguard to dig into Finn's shoulder in The Force Awakens.
Oh, that's
but
true.
He doesn't
that's true.
straight up stab somebody like he.
But
like
the straight up stab.
I just love the straight up stab, and that GIF, however you say it, whatever, that lives rent free in my mind of him just stabbing the guy. Yeah. I'm just like, wow, incredible.
That whole opening.
Yeah.
Feral Kylo. Like, I'm here for this right now.
Yeah, just unhinged completely. And then it's so interesting, you know, by the end he's completely turned. That's also another good part of Rise of Skywalker. But I do want to talk about his whole redemption and like general thoughts on it. And also, you know, I know a lot of people are upset that he died, which is fair, totally fair. I don't know how I feel about it, because for a lot of, like I said, when I first saw it, I didn't care about him that much. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Rey's still alive. I like her the best anyway. It is, but I mean, I did feel sad, obviously. But I mean, I think I like it because I like the parallel between him and Vader. Like, I know a lot of people don't like that and don't like how, you know, Star Wars seems to repeat itself. I do, I think, but I would like to hear, you know, possible alternate ways he could have been redeemed that, you know, weren't dying, and how that would have looked, because I mean, I think you both read Bloodline, I'm pretty sure, right?
I'm halfway through it right now.
Okay, so I'll try, like, I don't think this will spoil anything, but basically when everyone finds out, you know, that Vader is Leia's dad, everyone has a huge problem with it, and then we see that Vader was redeemed, and as the audience we know he's redeemed, but everybody else doesn't know that, nobody else cares. And so me thinking about that reaction to me is like, well, how could they have, you know, had Ben live happily ever after alive, because the people would not have been for it. And so to me, like, my argument is like the kindest thing the writers could have done was killing him, because then he didn't have to suffer. But I've also seen people say like that was just a lazy way out, which is totally a valid point too. So I would like to hear, if he would have lived, how would that have looked, like realistically, or ideally. I mean, we can go with the Reylo happily ever after, we can hear that too. But I would like to talk about that.
Yeah, as an avid Ben Solo deserved better supporter, I didn't even want like a happily ever after Reylo. Like eventually I would have, but my vision breakdown, because I've thought about this for a very long time. Basically, I am of the camp that I think killing him off was very lazy. Like, you redeemed him. I think it was mostly because I was angry that he didn't even have a real line. He literally says "ow" as Ben Solo, and that's it.
True.
That made me so angry. Like, Rey says Ben. You're telling me he couldn't just say Rey back to her? Like, that's really taking that much out of the movie. And so kind of my realistic one is, obviously he would come back. Poe and Finn would be like, what is he doing here? I wanted them to like explore how he would have been able to achieve forgiveness, if he could have even achieved forgiveness. My kind of like ideal scenario, and I know a lot of people actually have been saying this recently, it's been kind of like a more popular idea, is that he would have like come back, Rey would have tried to like fight for him to be like forgiven for stuff and like all this, but then he would have gone like vagabond Ben Solo. Like, I wanted him to be like this, like standalone. He goes around the galaxy helping people, kind of like a la Zuko in Avatar, where he like goes to the Earth Kingdom and he like helps this random family. I really wanted like Ben Solo goes off on his own and he tries to like get a sense of forgiving himself by helping other people. Obviously, that still means he like evades arrest, basically, I guess. But I would have liked it to then tie in like Rey goes looking for him, obviously, and like they reunite. But I also then would have had on the side like Rey and Finn like training the new Jedi, because I really think that that would have been a cool thing. And they eventually just like go looking for him or something, and he just kind of like has an isolation period almost. So yeah, that's my Ben Solo pitch.
I want that now. Now I'm not going to be able to have peace at night thinking about that. That sounds like such a great TV show. Like, oh my goodness.
You're telling me? I live with this every single day. I live with this burden.
No, I do too.
Yep.
So obviously I'm not happy that Ben Solo died. But I think he couldn't have died in a better way. I think, saving Rey and sacrificing himself to save Rey and literally giving up everything he had left just to bring her back was the most perfect way that Ben Solo could have gone out. And actually, that's what I predicted was going to happen before the movie. I was like, Kylo's going to turn back to the light and he's going to sacrifice himself to save Rey. And I was like, I knew it. But yeah, I think I'm not happy about it, but I think that was the best way for him to go out. But I think I'm having a really hard time, as much as I love Ben Solo, I'm having a really hard time thinking that he could be forgiven at all. Because obviously a lot of the choices he made weren't necessarily in his control. Obviously with Snoke and everything, we know that as the audience, but people in Star Wars don't know that. They think that Kylo, this is Kylo Ren, he's pure evil. There's not an ounce of good in him. And I don't think that people would have come around to him. So if Ben Solo lived, I think his life almost would have been pretty sad, because he would probably have to exile himself somewhere and just kind of lay low and stay quiet. So it's hard to think of what his life would have been like had he lived. I'm not a fan of him dying, but I think from a storytelling perspective, it does make sense.
Yeah. As sad as I am to admit it, it definitely makes sense in the context. I do think that another aspect that would have helped him possibly is the fact that Lando and Chewie are still alive, because Lando and Ben, like the fact that they cut that out, like didn't even put that into the Rise of Skywalker movie, makes me so sad. That like Lando and Ben talk and like he has Lando's blaster and everything like that. Like the little details, I think possibly like, you know how Lando and Janna are probably going to be like the new little duo. Because Chewbacca and Lando have lost everybody they cared
I know,
about. They
so
lost
sad.
Han, they lost Leia, they lost Luke. What about little Ben? Nope, Ben's gone too now. I think that would have been another really like interesting thing. Like, even if he is cast out, Chewbacca would have 100% gone with him because Uncle Chewie, and like he loved going to be with Ben when he was little, and he would have been kind of like his reminder of Han almost. And that's just kind of the sappy way of looking at it, just that he could have somehow lived a normal life somewhere, but people would, I mean, yeah, that's a good point about how people in Star Wars have no idea that he's actually not as instrumental in like a lot of what the First Order did as he was. Like, it was way more like Hux and the actual First Order than Kylo. Granted, Kylo still did horrible things. I'm not trying to apologize on behalf of Kylo Ren, but yeah, it would have been very complicated. I kind of like the complicated thing. Like, I wish they at least attempted that, or maybe just did something with that. But I do like the way he went out. That was a respectable way for him to die.
Yeah, it was definitely, it's like as much as they could have done, you know, with probably the time and like resources they had. I mean, had they known, you know, maybe we can make like this great TV show to kind of just keep going off the sequels, I would love that. I still want like sequel related TV shows, 100%. Like especially like a Clone Wars level show. I mean, Resistance is okay. I haven't really watched much of it. It's good, but it's not like Clone Wars level where it's with all these characters that we're further developing like movie characters, right? It's just extra.
I've been saying that for so long, is that the sequels need their Clone Wars, because the Clone Wars fleshed out the prequels tremendously. For me at least, I enjoy the prequel trilogy more because I've seen the Clone Wars. Had I not seen Clone Wars, I don't think I would really like the prequels. The sequels need a show to flesh out the world, to build on these characters, and I think it would make people appreciate the sequels more. But we might be getting a little bit of that in The Mandalorian, because if we can somehow explore the transition from the Empire to the First Order, and kind of make some of that make more sense and get some of that backstory we don't have, I think a lot of people will come around to the sequels and they'll be like, oh, you know what, maybe it does make sense. And then, you know, they'll go back, rewatch the movies, be like, yeah, you know, maybe they weren't as bad as I thought they were. So I do think that
we can hope.
Yeah, the sequels, they need their Clone Wars. So
because Resistance definitely is like, it's okay.
It's okay.
I think it's enjoyable. Again, like, I've watched it because I need it. I wanted content.
Yes.
I think Resistance does a good job explaining a little bit about the First Order. I think it builds a little bit of a foundation, definitely not fleshed out enough. And people don't pay it any attention because it's as childish, if not more childish than Rebels. And people like Rebels because it still has those old characters in it. You get Ahsoka, you get Vader. Obviously, people are still going to watch it. And I think it's actually, a lot of people still don't like it, but whatever, that's Rebels. Resistance, I think, starts out really well in season 1 at the end, when they show like this whole struggle between the government and the First Order, basically just bullying them and like holding them hostage, while the New Republic is technically a thing still. And it kind of gives you this feeling that like, okay, so they're using fear, and that like they use like scenes from the movies in the end of the first season and like into the second season, and it kind of illustrates that. I think they need a bigger, not children's show to do that more, because it's definitely focused a little more around like Kaz and this little, it's kind of a found family, but it's not even as fleshed out as the others. So agreed, they need a much more complex show to go deeper into the First Order and kind of what they want, because you get introduced to them and you're just like, okay, they're a bad guy.
No, there's like that really long period of time between like the fall of the Empire and, you know, the Force Awakens, and we don't have a lot on that. Like, I mean, like you said, I'm hoping like with the Mandalorian and Ranger of the New Republic, and, you know, some more, I'm trying to read some more like the books in that time period, because even like Bloodline, reading that made me again just appreciate so much more like where the First Order came from, and how, you know, peace only lasted like, what was it, like 30 years or something like that. Because I feel like that's a huge problem for a lot of people with the sequels, is it's just like this just feels like the same. And I mean, it is in a lot of ways, and it's not in a lot of ways. But I feel like, knowing that history is going to help a lot of people appreciate the events of the sequels way, way more. So yes, Lucasfilm, please give us a sequel version of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was really all like my main things I wanted to discuss. However, if you guys have any like last Kylo Ren, Ben Solo points, let's just go with those now.
I got one.
Yeah.
All his Han Solo mannerisms.
Yes.
Father, like son.
I've got
the slide in the hallway.
The shrug.
Oh yes.
Look at that.
I need
the
that.
Shrug. The slide in the hallway. The finger stick up. The blaster behind the back. No look behind the back. He is literally Han Solo's kid.
Oh, absolutely.
He is Han Solo's kid, and the shrug, the lightsaber handoff, and the shrug is my favorite scene in all of Star Wars.
The shrug is so
I love
good.
it so much, and I'm still waiting on my Ben Solo Funko Pop.
I was just gonna say, I love how they somehow managed to make a piece of like plastic, rubber, whatever Funkos are made of, like actually embody the shrug. Like it's incredible.
I need it. I
regret not
I'm so jealous when I see everyone else get it.
Yeah, I pre-ordered mine from Amazon, and I still haven't got it yet.
Yeah, I figured GameStop was the way to go. Clearly not, because they don't even have it. It used to have a shipment date, and now I don't see a shipment date anymore. And I'm like, I need this. I'm going crazy.
I need more. They need to make more Ben Solo merchandise, because I'm a big Black Series collector. Those are just like the 6-inch action figures, and they don't have a Ben Solo. And I'm like, that's all I want in life right now is a Black Series Ben Solo.
Yeah,
the amount of Ben Solo merch is criminal. It's so low, and it's depressing. As someone pointed that out on the TikTok I posted today, they were like, and yet they still keep pushing Grogu merch, and we literally haven't. There's so much Grogu out there.
So much Grogu.
Just give us Ben Solo.
There's honestly like too much Grogu out there. I mean, I love him as much as the next person, but like, I don't need 800 Grogu items.
No, as I'm like staring my Grogu on the face, I'm like, I don't need more of you. I just want Ben Solo stuff.
And it's not like any Ben Solo stuff wouldn't sell either.
Oh
like,
no,
if you
sell
make
like
anything
crazy.
from the sequel trilogy, Ben Solo is going to be the thing that sells the most. So I don't know what they're thinking right now by not giving us any Ben Solo stuff. It is infuriating almost.
Yeah, it's really a huge missed opportunity. I mean, I know I probably wouldn't buy a lot of it because, as I said, I'm indifferent. But however, this has actually made me appreciate him even more. I'm growing. I never disliked him. But I mean, there's like Ben Solo fans, like you guys, not you guys, but some of them, they scare me. They're crazy. Like everyone would buy so much stuff. Like, he's probably like the most obsessed over character in Star Wars, at least like of people I've seen anyway.
Yeah,
but
it's also definitely fueled by the Adam Driver obsession. I can't say that I'm exempt from that. Of course, I love him, but I know that all my fellow Adam Driver stans, my rats, they would spring at the chance to buy anything Ben Solo related. So
you know what, we love shameless simping, so it's okay. It's important.
All day.
But yeah, I guess if there's not anything else that you guys like are just dying to, go for it.
I think it's funny just thinking back of my whole TikTok kind of experience, how I guess I like Kylo Ren enough to do a Kylo Ren cosplay, because that's a thing that happened.
Everybody listening, go check out Kev's Kylo Ren cosplay. It's really great.
I was super nervous to do that at first. Like, I was like, this cosplay thing is like intimidating. I don't know if I could do it. So I posted a friends only video on TikTok one day, basically saying like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And then the support and the encouragement was just so nice. And any doubts I had about doing it were just gone. But I think it's funny because I don't make like serious cosplay, like Kylo cosplay content. I make a fool of myself when I'm wearing that costume.
It's really great.
Because like that's why I bought it for. But it's so much fun, and I guess that's telling of how much I like Kylo Ren as a character. If I'm gonna do a Kylo cosplay. So yeah.
Well, I love hearing about why people like what they like, because before I joined Star Wars TikTok, I I liked Star Wars and I liked what I liked. But in like the last year-ish that I've been on it, like my love of different parts of Star Wars has just grown incredibly. And like obviously Kylo slash Ben Solo is one of those things. So like I really appreciate, when people are willing to, explain why they like things. And that's something we definitely don't have enough of in this fandom. But I mean, for me, like if you explain why you like something that I don't really have an opinion of, odds are I'm going to end up liking it because I'm just happy to hear, why people are happy about it. And that makes me want to like it too. So like I said, I love seeing you cosplaying and all of your videos, Anna, of just like your Ben Solo skits. You posted one today that made me laugh so hard with like
I was pretty
Luke
proud of that
and
one.
Luke and the lightsaber. I was like, wow, this is incredible. So
Yeah,
think that's
I
great.
posted a joke on my Snapchat that was like, I swear, if they make a Ben Solo prequel series and I'm not a receiver of a promo package, I will throw a riot because I make so much Ben Solo content and he is not even Kylo. Like I make Kylo content, but I make a lot of Ben Solo content. For a character who's barely on the screen, I'm living rent free in the Ben Solo hashtag. So I was like, I'm just saying, Disney, I just want to talk.
Yeah, no. If they do make a Ben show at some point and you're not like the first person to get one of those, like those Bad Batch boxes people have been getting.
Yes, exactly.
I will riot on your behalf.
Thank you.
Both of
We're
you
all
guys,
rallying.
Yep. We'll make a petition.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you to everybody who's, still listening to us ramble on about, a great character. If you're still here and you've had mixed reviews about Kylo like I did, I hope you like him more now. As always, hope everyone who is listening has a great day, night, morning, evening. I don't know, whatever it is, wherever you are. It's late for you guys. It's not so late for me. But as always, may the force be with you.